This is a presentation on citizen science, participation and planning. As part of your Themes and Spatial Planning module, you will explore several topics relevant to contemporary planning policy and practice. Today's presentation will introduce you to the participatory research practice of citizen science and discuss how it is playing an increasingly important role in the realm of planning. Regarding the structure of this presentation, I'll begin by outlining an introduction to what citizen science is. I'll then detail the participation process that underpins citizen science before looking into the value and use of citizen science for planning. I will then assess a couple of case studies of citizen science projects based both in marine and urban planning realms to get a better understanding of how volunteers are used in citizen science projects, what the knowledge is that these projects create, and where this knowledge goes to. I will then finish by having a discussion that reviews the emergence of citizen science and looking into how we can maximise its potential to support more sustainable and inclusive planning practice. In its most general sense, citizen science is a collaborative and participatory approach to research in which individuals and groups of members of the public practice science outside of an academic or industrial environment. It is seen as a means of opening up science and allowing individual members of the public to have a say in scientific decision-making. It has been driven forward in recent years by two key factors. One, advancements in technology, and two, the increasing drive of local communities to protect their environments. Although there is no definitive definition of the objective of citizen science, it is usually thought as a twofold approach to producing scientific knowledge as well as creating personal and learning outcomes within volunteers. What sets citizen science apart from other participatory research approaches is its ability to create transformative change. Due to the exceedingly active forms of participation that citizen science projects are seen to introduce, many projects not only contribute towards science, but also have the capability of instigating change to current practices by presenting alternative forms of knowledge and action. This is the more radical potential of citizen science, and we will explore this capacity in more detail later in the presentation. A key advantage of citizen science, as with any other means of collaborative research, is the fact that it can act as a cost-effective means of generating large amounts of data. This is due to the large amounts of individuals who take part in projects, allowing projects to cover vast spatial and temporal scales. This is significantly different to the traditional interpretation of science, where a select number of qualified individuals would conduct research matters. To the opposite, citizen science is a means of engaging large numbers of non-professionals and amateurs within research projects. In turn, this has rendered citizen science as a powerful tool for engaging people with science and scientific matters. Such engagement can increase the awareness and ownership which individual participants have of environmental and scientific issues and gives them more of a stake in the world, allowing them to use their local knowledge and action to have a bigger role and influence upon larger decisions. Just as there is no definitive objective of citizen science, there is no one defined process of participation that projects follow. As such, citizen science projects are seen as multi-layered, and they introduce volunteers to a range of different tasks relevant to the context of their project. This can allow volunteers of different skill sets and interests to play different roles within the individual projects in which they engage with. It is important to acknowledge that citizen science can be utilised within a wide range of fields. Whilst this presentation will focus upon ecological and environmental projects within the realm of planning, recent years have seen huge developments in the use of citizen science within the fields of astronomy, engineering, genetics and public health. Indeed, particularly in the realm of public health, partnerships among researchers and community members through citizen science projects is considered to be an important opportunity to empower communities to take action for better health. We have also seen huge increases in the use of citizen science in the wake of COVID-19, where advancements in technology mean that individuals can be recorded and measured to provide important public health information. As mentioned, citizen science supports and advances a multi-layered process of participation. This means that individuals within citizen science projects will be able to conduct a range of different tasks and roles. At the most basic level, this can involve the observation or collection of data. Beyond this, citizen scientists can also analyse such data before disseminating the information which the projects collect. The specific role which individuals will play within their citizen science project depends upon their skill sets and interests. To analyse or disseminate information collected by projects may require volunteers who have developed skill sets over a long period of time participating with citizen science. Projects will have coordinators and managers who will position volunteers in certain roles which they see as to be the most beneficial outcome. Just as there are different levels and forms of volunteer participation, there can also be different types of citizen science projects. These projects are defined by the manner in which they produce knowledge and utilise participants. Academic literature suggests that there can be three different types of projects: contributory, collaborative, and co-produced. Contributory projects are those which mainly focus on producing information that can contribute towards a large body of knowledge. Thus, these types of initiatives are relatively strict in their nature and rarely use volunteers beyond observation and collection roles. In collaborative and co-produced projects, citizen scientists can play a much wider range of roles. In collaborative citizen science projects, for instance, volunteers unsurprisingly play more of a collaborative role in the project. This means they can also get involved in project design and implementation tasks. As such, volunteers may help to refine project objectives, analyze data, or disseminate findings, as well as participating in data collection tasks, of course. Co-creative projects represent a further step towards citizen-led research. Initiatives of this type are equally designed by scientists and volunteers. Participants of this type of project can therefore be involved in most, if not all, of the steps of the scientific process. Not only does the type of citizen science project set the tone for the participation process that it advances, but it will also shape the potential output of the initiative. Contributory projects, due to their nature, will be bound to fill in data gaps and answering specific pre-selected questions. This limits the role of volunteers to sensory roles. In collaborative and co-produced projects, however, there is more scope for volunteers to drive projects and set their own objectives. Accordingly, more radical projects that are capable of instigating transformative change are more likely to support collaborative or co-produced frameworks. Finally, it is useful to provide some information on the coordinators and managers of these projects. Citizen science can be used by governments and professional researchers, but is most commonly supported by charity organisations and NGOs. These types of groups often use citizen science as a means of public outreach, and, as we have discussed, can be put forward as a useful way of empowering local knowledge. To further clarify what citizen science projects can involve, it is useful to provide some examples. A common form of initiative can involve species monitoring, such as whale, dolphin, or shark watching at sea, or a host of different types of bird watching on land. Volunteers can observe and collect data on the species that they see, often recording important information on vulnerable or under threat species. This data can be used to improve our understanding of how specific animals live and how we can best support their conservation. Beyond this, projects can involve underwater monitoring initiatives, where volunteers record vital information on the condition and health of marine species and habitats. Projects of this nature can require volunteers to have a higher set of skills and experience, as basic observation and recording tasks necessitate a strong diving ability. Like all forms of citizen science, underwater dives conducted by a large group of citizens can provide vast recordings of data that are simply unattainable through professional research. A more entry-level type of citizen science project can involve litter and pollution surveying. In these types of initiatives, volunteers are tasked with the role of collecting and recording the type of litter and pollution that they see in their local environments. Most commonly, these projects are recorded and take place on maritime environments such as beaches and coastlines. However, they can also take place in urban environments. By recording and analysing the most prevalent types of litter in certain locations, these types of projects can efficiently inform management responses to the problem of pollution. Evidently, these types of projects require less experience and skill sets amongst volunteers, and can act as a good entry avenue towards further citizen science participation. Further examples of citizen science can include participatory mapping initiatives. Participatory mapping is a general term used to define a set of approaches and techniques that combine the tools of modern cartography with participatory methods to record and represent the spatial knowledge of local communities. Recorded information can then be factored into development plans, ensuring that local heritage is protected. In recent years, we've also seen significant growth in the use of citizen science to monitor and measure air quality, as well as water quality. Both these types of initiatives can play an important role in revealing public health issues that require attention. By pinpointing specific areas where air or water quality is poor, this knowledge can be used to call for government or council response, leading to action that tackles these problems at their source. In recent years, we have seen a range of different activist frontier organisations, such as Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, initiate projects of this nature. In these projects, they have been able to reveal crucial information on the failures of business and industry to limit their levels of harmful emissions and pollution, as well as highlighting the failure of governments to respond to these concerns in an efficient manner. Now that we have discussed what citizen science is, the range of objectives and aims that define its value, as well as the manner in which volunteers engage with projects and the various different types of initiatives that exist, it is important to explore the outputs of citizen science in a little more detail. As alluded to before, citizen science is often seen as a twofold approach of opening up science. On the one hand, it is a means of producing knowledge in a collaborative manner, and, on the other, it is a progressive way of instilling learning and personal outcomes within volunteers. Firstly, regarding knowledge production, citizen science is seen to produce a range of different forms of knowledge. The specific type and value of citizen science knowledge is dependent upon the project in question, as well as the manner in which the knowledge is disseminated. As was made clear when exemplifying the different types of citizen science projects that exist, produced knowledge can include spatial and temporal data, as well as trend analysis and monitoring records. In turn, such information and data can be used to support conservation plans, as well as influencing land use and marine planning decision-making. Importantly, citizen science knowledge can also represent socially or culturally distinct understandings of landscape. Such information is often excluded from mainstream science. This is particular types of knowledge that communities and local residents themselves perceive as being important. This can include land boundaries, traditional natural resource management practices, and sacred areas. Citizen science projects can provide an active avenue to empower certain types of knowledge, such as these socially and culturally important forms. The theory of knowledge is a wide-ranging concept and not easy to define. Whilst I will not go into detail on it in this presentation, it is useful to clarify citizen science knowledge, due to its reliance upon scientific and local insight, can represent what Greek philosopher Aristotle defined as pronesis. Aristotle noted how some knowledge is easy to transfer and learn, while others requires practice. Likewise, some knowledge is developed through reflection of a specific domain. He then defined three types of knowledge as a result. This included scientific knowledge that is transmittable and explicit, as well as craft knowledge that is embedded within individuals and can only be shared through teaching and learning. Beyond this is a third type of knowledge, known as pronesis, which translates to practical wisdom in English. This includes aspects of a situation, critical analytical reflection, and scrutinizing knowledge systems. When having the needed scientific and craft insight of a specific domain, one can develop the capability to find the right answer via pronesis. As such, due to the manner in which citizen science leans upon both scientific knowledge and local insight, it can be argued that this has the capability to produce a more complete form of knowledge. However, citizen science isn't just about knowledge production. As mentioned, it can also lead to impacts within volunteers themselves. By engaging with citizen science projects, volunteers are presented with the opportunity to extend their scientific and environmental learning. This can improve the technical and practical skills of volunteers, as well as enhancing their awareness of environmental and ecological issues. These personal and learning outcomes are seen to develop throughout the participation process, as volunteers develop relationships with other participants, as well as becoming more experienced with the tasks that they conduct. In turn, citizen science can instill stewardship, empowerment, and feelings of togetherness within volunteers as they develop a more inclusive and participatory environment. Most commonly, these outcomes are indirect and are not outlined as key objectives of citizen science projects. However, they are crucial for the recruitment and retainment of volunteers, as satisfaction, educational advancement, and personal growth often define how a citizen wants to continue or leave their citizen science project. In a similar manner to how citizen science projects recognise this need to understand the learning and personal outcomes of their volunteers so that they can tailor future initiatives to suit the needs and requirements of participants, research has shown a growing interest in this field of study. Indeed, in my own personal research, I've been keen to examine how participation in citizen science can impact the political consciousness and action of volunteers following the completion of their projects. I found that many volunteers do become more politically active and critical of government's approach to environmental management as a result of becoming more aware of environmental issues and the need for greater conservation of our natural landscapes. These types of insights, among many others, highlight the outward impact that citizen science can have beyond the boundaries of individual projects. Evidently, citizen science is growing at a rapid rate, and with more projects comes the potential to further enhance the production of citizen science knowledge. Whilst this is certainly a positive progression and reflects how more active and engaged citizenry is on the rise, there are several limitations that citizen science must overcome. Most notably, these include concerns in the ability of citizen science projects to produce high-quality data. Like all forms of science, citizen science requires quality assurance and validity checks. As participants are non-professionals and conduct scientific tasks with limited amounts of training, errors and inaccuracies are prevalent. Likewise, volunteer bias can be embedded within citizen science knowledge, something which can spoil recorded data sets and tarnish the reputation of projects. Other limitations include the fact that significant amounts of consistent funding, resource allocations, and training are required to bring projects to the level in which they can contribute reliable data. Due to this reliance upon external funders, the scope and objectives of initiatives can be finalized well before volunteer input. Finally, it's important to note that citizen science is not capable of answering all types of questions. Whilst it can be used as a valuable means of recording fine-scale data over vast scales, less projects are suited to responding to exceedingly technical objectives. It is important to bear these limitations and concerns in mind during the rest of the presentation. Now that we have covered and discussed the key factors and themes relating to citizen science, it is time to focus upon its use and value for the realm of planning. In particular, in this section, we will be looking into how citizen science can be used to support a more sustainable future for the development of our planet. To simplify this discussion, I will focus on two important problems currently facing planning. Firstly, the use of knowledge within the planning system, and secondly, the issue of public participation. By problematizing these two issues, I will then demonstrate how citizen science can act as an active solution and will utilize several case study projects to illustrate the successes and challenges of such approaches. Traditionally, planning decisions have been informed by scientific and technocratic knowledge. As such, plans often exclude important community perceptions and overlook the value of local knowledge. Whilst recent decades have seen a movement away from this type of knowledge rationalization, there remains a need to broaden the use of knowledge within the realm of planning. Citizen science offers a useful alternative, and many projects focus on presenting information that can fill specific data gaps within planning policy, as well as being able to influence how development plans consider environmental issues. As mentioned, citizen science can also incorporate knowledge that is otherwise hidden or unattainable, as well as reflecting culturally important issues that technocratic knowledge are unable to include. As such, citizen science can combat the manner in which planning relies upon a restricted basis of knowledge by presenting alternative sources. Indeed, there is an increasing focus within research circles to examine how alternative avenues for the production of knowledge, such as forms of participatory research, can challenge hegemonic thinking within planning. This supports the further expansion of citizen science as a means of democratizing issues of concern within planning decision-making. Added to its creation of knowledge, citizen science can also function as a solution to problems regarding public participation in planning. Public participation is a political principle and practice that seeks to facilitate the involvement of citizens potentially affected by or interested in planning decisions. However, it remains a poorly operationalized theory in practice, and we often see cases of the illusion of inclusion, wherein planning processes are made to look like they are inclusive and responsive to the concerns of members of the public, but in reality are often used in residential workshops as tokenistic means of fulfilling participation requirements. Due to the fact that citizen science can involve large amounts of members of the public, it can act as a means of enhancing the participation of the public with the planning sphere. In turn, this can enhance citizen empowerment, local democracy, and can also improve the legitimacy of planning decisions. Citizen science already engages residents with issues relevant to the planning process, such as environmental conservation, coastal erosion, the impact of development on the environment, as well as air and water quality issues. Thus, participants are well versed in issues of importance, and by supporting citizen science projects, the planning process can truly conduct effective public participation. To exemplify how citizen science projects have been used to tackle these two key issues within the planning sphere regarding the use of knowledge and the lack of public engagement, I will now talk through several case study examples. I will first illustrate some maritime citizen science projects that were seen to support sustainable development within the realm of marine and maritime planning. After this, I will then begin to assess how terrestrial initiatives have been able to create active urban participation. The Hauraki Gulf is a coastal feature of the North Island of New Zealand. It is an area of 4,000 kilometres squared and is largely protected from the Pacific Ocean by the Great Barrier Island. It is an area of great environmental interest, and with growing threats from industry, tourism and climate change, the previous decades have seen numerous calls for the protection of the Gulf. As part of this, citizen science projects have been established by local residents as a means of providing fine resolution environmental health data to inform marine planning decision making. The environmental health of the Hauraki Gulf has been in decline for a number of years, leading to diminished fish stocks, the presence of toxic chemicals, litter, and damaging coastal development. Whilst professional research has surveyed much of the Gulf, limitations on time and resources force these studies to extrapolate findings, rendering them of less use for conservation purposes. The citizen science projects set up by locals were used to determine public perceptions of the environmental health of the marine park, as well as recording species and habitat conditions using hotspot analysis to identify areas in most need of protection and recovery. Not only were the knowledge outputs of these citizen science projects used to inform the marine planning process, as well as ensuring the sustainable future of the Hauraki Gulf, they were also able to ensure that local residents had an input in the decision-making process. A further marine citizen science project of note, also situated in New Zealand, is the Taranaki Community Initiative. Supported and funded by national government, the project incorporates environmental societies, schools, scientists and members of the public. Its core aim has been to gather local knowledge and cultural information about Taranaki coastal areas in order to better protect them. An online portal is used to allow easy upload of data about the species captured by community members, and participants also contribute in the form of project planning, data analysis, hypothesis formulation, and communicating findings. In turn, this has created a two-way learning process where the community themselves, local government, conservation groups, and end users learn from the findings. This project has since expanded and now contains two separate initiatives covering both the North and South Islands of Taranaki. As well as marine projects, citizen science is widely used in urban environments and has been advanced as an active means of creating participatory urbanism. Citizen science has been collectively used across neighbourhoods to enable individuals to become active participants in their community. Participants collect and share measurements of the area that matter to them and use citizen science as a means of advancing this knowledge to call for change. Examples can include measuring issues relevant to public health, including the monitoring of COVID-19 and its spread amongst communities, air and water quality testing, as well as measuring noise pollution and the condition and health of local wildlife. Key to urban participation in citizen science has been advancements in technology. The late 2000s saw a shift in mobile phone usage from communication tools to a network measurement instrument, and this has enabled interested and engaged citizens to easily upload scientific data that reflects issues that are important to their daily lives. A common form of urban citizen science projects that focus on ecological and environmental issues is tree monitoring groups. The Urban Tree Growth and Longevity Working Group is a Chicago-based initiative where local residents are tasked with recording the trees that line their streets. Although street tree inventories are traditionally carried out by professional scientists, citizen scientists are increasingly used in many cities. This involves monitoring the growth and longevity of trees to assess the wider environmental health of the area. It is an important component to factor into air quality studies and can influence local management authorities in regards to their environmental development plans. The application of citizen science in urban forestry builds on a rich tradition of volunteerism in forest management, with volunteers engaging in tree planting and other forms of stewardship. The Urban Tree Growth and Longevity Group developed a customizable framework for urban tree monitoring protocols that provides technical guidance for local urban forestry organizations in tackling tree growth and mortality. Such activities were seen to deepen participants' civic engagement and cultivate a sense of empowerment. Tree managements have also benefited from the additional monitoring sources that have been able to pinpoint areas that require most attention. Tasks carried out by participants can range from simple observation and recording duties to the analysis of collected reports and the lobbying of councillors to enhance the focus placed upon green development. Turning to the UK, a recent urban citizen science project of note is the Citizen Grain River Management Initiative. This project is situated in West London and for the last number of years has been monitoring the water quality of the River Crane that flows through the catchment area. The river itself has been subject to major pollution incidents, serious sewage discharge, and receives significant runoff from Heathrow Airport. As a result, this has resulted in the poor water quality within the river. In response, there has been growing interest from local residents to take practical action to prevent the river from further damaging the environmental health of the surrounding communities. A river restoration fund was established by local water companies and partly used to establish the Citizen Grain project. This comprises two monitoring programs, water sampling for chemical indicators and river fly monitoring initiatives. Water samples are collected by volunteers and analysed by local water companies. The findings of the study have enhanced the Council's understanding of the river and therefore has enabled more effective management interventions to be undertaken. Council work was being conducted to prevent sewer spills and limit the runoff of water from Heathrow. The project continues to monitor the water quality of the river, and volunteers are encouraged to further their participation by supporting similar urban participatory initiatives throughout London. This presentation has introduced the concept and practice of citizen science, highlighting its use for scientific research, the beneficial manner in which participation can impact volunteers, and, in particular, how projects can support more inclusive, sustainable and democratic planning processes. To conclude, I will briefly review the growth of citizen science and pose some questions regarding its future development. Citizen science has emerged amongst a new wave of participatory research initiatives, giving engaged residents the opportunity to give meaning and value to their local insight. The practice can give volunteers a voice in the development realm and ensure that they can share their perception on important matters. Citizen science knowledge has been seen to function in a number of different ways, be it filling data gaps or answering pre-selected questions, or following more activist-like approaches where collected knowledge is used as a means of influencing decision makers to create change or to challenge their policy positions. As we have considered, citizen science is therefore well positioned to act as a solution to the failings of the planning system, both in marine and urban realms. The case studies that were touched on highlight this, illustrating how active citizens can come together to utilize scientific research as a means of engaging with planning decision-making processes. To fully understand citizen science projects, however, it is important to assess the organizational structure of initiatives. This involves questioning how they are set up, who they are funded by, the role of participants within the projects, and what the overall aim is that they are chasing. Although we have not delved too far into these issues today, it is evident from the projects that we have analysed that trade-offs amongst the key organisational factors must be found. Governments are likely to support initiatives that will effectively respond to issues requiring further detail or gaps of knowledge that need to be filled. In turn, such projects provide less scope for participants to act in radical manners or to put their insight forward as a way of calling for change. To the opposite, projects that are very much focused on creating transformative change will require more freedom from funders and are more likely to employ volunteers who are capable and comfortable of acting in this manner. In general, citizen science is a vastly expanding and diverse practice. Few projects are the same, and it is important, if they are to be successful, that they cater to the needs of their participants and follow a clearly defined objective. This leads me to conclude that citizen science has both strengths and weaknesses in regards to issues within the planning realm. In regards to its strengths, these include the fact that citizen science can act as a cost-effective means of gathering large amounts of data. Such data can also cover vast spatial and temporal scales, something which other research methods can struggle to achieve. Furthermore, for environmental issues that require long-term continuing monitoring, such as species or habitat examination, citizen science can function as a valuable means of using committed volunteers to provide a reliable source of data collection over long stretches of time. As we have mentioned many times throughout this presentation, citizen science can also support local or native knowledge that is commonly excluded in the planning realm and is difficult to collect through alternative means. Likewise, we have also seen how citizen science can positively impact volunteers and can instigate more active forms of citizenship within participants. By enhancing the scientific and environmental learning of volunteers, citizen science projects offer great educational benefit and can allow people of all ages to continuously improve their knowledge of both environmental systems and how citizens can support sustainability. Also, with technology continually developing, more and more citizen science projects are operating through entirely virtual means. Although this evidently limits personal engagement through citizen science, it demonstrates how important knowledge can be collected at any time and at any location throughout the world. This will massively enhance the value of citizen science, and even during the lockdown of the last few months, allowed engaged participants to continue participating in their selected projects. In regards to the limitations of citizen science, there is a significant concern regarding the propensity of volunteer bias to be embedded within the data. Particularly when projects are relevant to the personal or local interests of volunteers, there is a chance that recorded data can be tainted by volunteer perceptions. This can spoil useful data and harm the reputation and image of citizen science projects. Additionally, as projects use non-professionals and amateurs, the occurrence of inaccuracies and mistakes are prevalent. This is a concern that citizen science will be forced to deal with as a result of its inclusive engagement. We have also seen incidents where overly complex or demanding participation processes can discourage volunteers. To function successfully, projects must maintain professional standards and strict validation and analysis procedures. This can prove too much for some volunteers and in turn limit participation numbers. Recruitment and retainment processes are challenging aspects of citizen science, and dealing with volunteers dropping out of projects is a key problem for coordinators. It is important to also acknowledge that significant investment is required to efficiently and effectively run citizen science projects. Training, individual support, and the providence of equipment cost significant amounts of money and is difficult to sustain. Finally, it is obvious that funding must be on a continual basis. New projects usually require a number of years of practice before they can successfully realize their potential, yet it can be difficult to obtain funding for these lengths of time, particularly if the first few years of the project will show little output. Thus, trying to find more flexible and dynamic funding is required, yet this can be difficult to obtain. Looking forward, it is predicted that citizen science will continue to grow throughout the coming decades as a result of a number of key factors. 1. A growing desire of individuals to protect the environment, spend time outdoors and become engaged with nature. 2. A critical need to up our recording of natural landscapes, species, habitats and environmental challenges so that we can better understand how climate change is impacting our planet and make use of this information to create solutions to these problems. And 3, the continual development of technology, where it is becoming increasingly easy to submit sightings, monitoring reports, and records of important ecological information through mobile and technological apps. If we are to fully understand the value of citizen science as it grows, however, it is crucial that it continues to follow the general aim of opening up science and seeking to create more inclusive, democratic, and sustainable processes of decision making. As such, it is important to continually remind citizen science projects what it is that they want to achieve, what type of knowledge that they want to produce and why, where this knowledge will go to and what impact it will have, and also to ask how they will be able to manage the limitations and challenges that will arise. Furthermore, it is important to remember that participants are at the core of citizen science. Projects must factor in their perceptions, motivations, and outcomes into project design, as they will be central to retaining volunteers and ensuring that projects respond to their needs. Finally, if citizen science is to realize its transformative potential and become capable of presenting alternative knowledge that can radically transform issues of injustice and inequality, the practice will require a paradigm shift. Projects of this nature cannot simply act as a means of filling data gaps and supporting volunteer learning. Instead, transformative citizen science must seek to produce knowledge and action that can challenge the status quo, shift power relations, and utilize participant action to propose new realities for environmental management. This is not to say that all forms of citizen science must function or should function in this manner, of course. Rather, this is more applicable to those collaborative or co-produced initiatives that seek to operationalize larger-scale change. In total, citizen science can act as an engaging and active means of combating the persistent problems regarding knowledge use and public participation within planning. There is evidently a need for solutions to these problems, paving the way for citizen science to become increasingly recognized in the coming years. This concludes this presentation on citizen science, public participation, and planning. I hope it has been of interest. On the following slides, I include a reference list of academic literature that was used to inform this presentation, as well as some extra articles that may be of interest. On the final slide, I also include some websites, YouTube videos, and blogs that discuss citizen science in more detail. Thanks for listening.